We're very excited about this call, very happy to be here with you all. And we're going to have a download from Thomas on global social witnessing, under the title also of Mindfully Attending Our World. And as many of you know, in the Pocket Project, we've been having regular global social witnessing calls since March 2021, and deepening that work also during the climate conference, COP26. Anna, I can keep unmuting myself, so please keep noting that you stay muted on your phones and your computers. So we've been practicing global social witnessing together regularly. And this year we received, as part of a partnership, we received EU funding to co-develop a curriculum on global social witnessing, and especially bringing it to the European situation around refugees. And to start off this learning journey, we thought it would just be so brilliant to have an update. Thomas started the practice of global social witnessing during a Celebrate Life festival, I believe in 2017. And since then, time has passed and we keep learning together. So very excited about this. My name is Kasia Hübl. I work as the CEO of the Pocket Project, and I'm very happy to pass over to Thomas in a moment. I just want to mention that we will be recording this session and it will be available online on the Pocket Project website afterwards. And also to all of you, just inviting you to use your freedom as Zoom users to shift between the speaker view and the gallery view as feels right for your system and your awareness during the call. So most of you will know Thomas, but just a brief introduction. Thomas Hübl is a renowned teacher, author, and international facilitator whose lifelong work integrates the core insights of the great wisdom traditions and mysticism with the discoveries of science. And since the early 2000s, Thomas has been facilitating large-scale events and courses that focus on healing, the integration of trauma, and also then global social witnessing. Thomas is the author of the book, Healing Collective Trauma, a process for integrating our intergenerational and cultural wounds. And yeah, the Pocket Project was founded by Thomas and his wife, Judith Sasportas. So with that, I want to pass it over to you, Thomas, and thank you for being with us here today. Over to you.
Thank you, Kasia. Hello, everybody. I will just put my gallery view here. Okay. Well, great. Let's start with a short attunement to not only speak about global social witnessing, but to actually be in a state of witnessing. Let's start with a moment that you just have a look, like what I call a screenshot of your current experience. Like when you look inside yourself and you see, how do I feel coming into this call? And coming into a space here that is new, and what's your physical, emotional, mental experience right now. You just take a screenshot, like a first impression. And then with a couple of breaths to just deepen a bit your experience of your body. See how when you let your exhalations guide you deeper into your body. Just feel the parts of your body that feel energized, where you feel aliveness, presence, simply where you feel yourself well. And once you're connected to your physical body, you can also check in with what's the current stress level that you bring with you into this meeting. On a scale of 1 to 10, what's your check-in right now? I feel pretty relaxed, a bit stressed, more stressed. And just notice, there's nothing to do. Just bring attention to. And then for a moment to check in what kind of emotional experience is present in you right now. What's your emotional flavor that you bring into this meeting? And then what's aware of you feeling yourself? What's the part of you, or what's the awareness? I feel my body, and I'm aware that I feel my body. So what is aware? If you don't think about awareness, but if you see what's awareness right now in this moment, and as you kind of connect deeper to yourself, as you come here into this meeting, let's open slowly your eyes, but see if you can do it without disconnecting from your inner sensations. Like you stay connected to feeling yourself, gently open your eyes. And then have a moment to look who's sitting here with us. Just to browse through a few pages to see, to get a sense of a few people who are with you here in the space, or co-creating this space with you. Because what we practice, what we're doing right now is also like a sense of witnessing. We're creating a space for collective witnessing right now. feeling our social environment when you allow your whole body to look and not only your eyes. And you feel into the space that we are. So we have raising our awareness of the social environment. Very good. Well, now we have the house that we all arrive here, or arrived here. Can start with our exploration of global social witnessing, I guess. Kosha, how do we wanna, should I start, or do we start with some specific
Well, I could start just with a
aspects?
question and help start it off. So, this idea that instead of connecting to events in the world through our minds on the mental channel, to actually open up our bodies and our emotions and create an inner space that is really able to receive and respond to global events. I would love to invite you to describe the practice in more detail, and also maybe describe what attracted you, what pulled you, what asked you to invite us into this practice, and why is it so important?
Yeah, first, I mean, like my deep interest is the fact that all of us have been born into like a pre-traumatized world. And that when we look at society, we say, oh, this is how life is often. But in fact, when we look at our current society, we see two things that look like one. We see emergent, relational, resonant, innovative, updating, caring processes, engagement. And then we see repetitive, non-emergent, often re-traumatizing, distant, or less engaged or indifferent aspects of life that are kind of mixed into what seems like one society. And we have been born into, like, because trauma didn't start with us. And so the fact that trauma exists already over a long period of time means I grew up in the water and I was either breathing or in the air that contains trauma. So it's very normal to us, but it hasn't been differentiated or precisely named that some of the things are not normal, they are wounded. And I think that's a bit of a we need to take that in account when we talk about global social witnessing. And so, given the fact that we all have been conditioned by the collective trauma field in the various areas in the world where we come from, it's harder for us to identify it because it's built into our nervous system. It left an imprint in our nervous system. Plus the trauma that we experienced potentially in our own biography, that our ancestors experienced and that has been transmitted to us, and that the culture carries, like the US culture, the German culture, the Chinese culture, whatever, the Latin American cultures. And so when we and the second thing that I think is important for global social witnessing is there is interiority. so the internal sense perception, and our capacity to have a refined interior experience, which becomes the resonance body for me to interact with the world. So what I mean by that is like there's interiority and then there is my environment. I grow up in a family, like a family is the environment, and it helps me to wire certain functions inside myself. And so I take on more autonomy within an environment that is my supportive environment, more or less supportive. And that's true for multiple radiuses within society too. And so that interior space is a space that is, when it's open, is resonant, is related, is based on I feel you feeling me. I feel you feeling me is like the language of relating. And so when that space is open, relating is like a data streaming method. It's like Netflix. Like you don't download your movie anymore onto your computer and then you watch it. You watch it while you download it. So relating is the same. It's like a data streaming. I feel you and it happens online. Like now, here, we are sitting here and it's online. Relating. I can feel you deeply through the screen. And when we take these two things together, so the part of us that is hurt or traumatized can't really sense and resonate with. So when we get met there, either we get hyperactivated and really stressed, or we get indifferent and numb, and we feel separate. And that's for the culture true too. So when we hear about events that happen in culture, we might get hyperactivated, hyper anxious, very stressed, or we go a bit blank and numb and become a bit indifferent. It didn't happen to me, so stuff happens. But there is the caring's missing, the caring aspect of a mutual world that we are inhabiting. And so I need to say this because otherwise global social witnessing doesn't make so much sense. And so when my interior space is resonating with my family members, my closer environment, my workspaces, up to societal events, so then there is a relational streaming happening. So I'm part of, as a citizen, as a mature citizen, I'm part of the societal process that's happening. But where I'm hurt, I feel a bit removed, or I feel over-attached, but I don't feel I'm in a regulated space, part of. And I think some of the fragmentation we see very strongly right now through the pandemic, it's pretty highlighted how much trauma fragmentation is being visible right now. And so we developed global social witnessing as a social intervention technology in a way. So because real witnessing combined with sensing, that's why we often call it also presencing, like presence or witnessing plus sensing is an intervention. It has an effect. When something is being seen and felt, it affects the event. That's the foundational part of any healing or therapeutic relationship, is that being able to be witnessed and felt by somebody is already inducing a deeper connectedness and opens a healing space. I mean, that's the basis of any kind of therapeutic relationship. And I think the same is also true for our societal responsiveness. Now we need to discern between activation and responsiveness. The fact when I see something or I hear something on the news and I get very emotional and I get very stressed, doesn't mean that I'm responding to the situation. I'm getting activated. And then some people might say, yeah, but I feel a lot. But when I say I feel a lot, doesn't mean that it's necessarily beneficial to the process. I might just feel a lot of my own stress and trauma come up when in the face of trauma. And that amplifies. And sensational media is, in a way, counterproductive to social health, because sensational media touches a lot the hyperactivation, or it hits the numbness. So it creates more fragmentation in a society naturally, because it plays the trauma instrument. Whereas media is supposed to inform us. But what is information? It's in form. So when I look at you, Kosha, right now, like you inform me through your social agency, you inform me. So I have you in my central nervous system. The Kosha that I see lives in Thomas. So information means I can create a form of the world in me. And that creates intimacy, that creates connection, that creates caring, that creates responsiveness. But where I'm traumatized, the Kosha in Thomas is a bit distorted. So I cannot really feel you where I'm hurt. And that's the basis of global social witnessing. Consciously surfacing where I cannot be a contemporary witness. Consciously surfacing where is the end of my conscious participation in the world, where my conscious universe ends. And because we are not saying in global social witnessing, we should be able to feel everything, not at all. That's not what we are saying. We're also not saying we need to feel every trauma that's happening in the world. No, we're not saying that. All we are saying is when I read a news feed like a big fire or a school shooting or anything else that happens in my neighborhood or in the world somewhere, that I am able to have a practice to notice that very often I might be a mental witness, but it doesn't mean that I am also an emotional and physical witness. That I can represent an event in myself. So to create kind of a caring connectedness to whatever is the event. And I think where the limit appears, that's the sweet spot of global social witnessing. Because that shows us how our internal fragmentation participates in the external event, because they are interconnected. It looks like the event happened somewhere and somebody did it, but that relieves me from my participation in it. And I think, not that I'm directly participating in that event, but as a citizen, I'm part of the societal process. So that's a little bit the beginning. So it's based on like developing interiority, that the social body has interiority too. We have individual witnessing and collective witnessing. And the trauma reduces our capacity to be a contemporary witness. And that's why we are part of the collective unconscious. Like that's my share. Like as if I have shares of a company, we all have shares of the collective unconscious. And through that share, I'm also inherently entangled with events that are happening in society. And that's why I think revealing by practicing witnessing consciously, I think we can reveal where it starts to be difficult to participate as a physical, emotional, mental, relational, spiritual witness. And I think the gap between the internal witnessing and the external events is part of its repetitive cycles. This is it's a short summary. I know it's a bit more complex than that, but maybe we can.
Well, I mean, it's just, yeah, I think it's perfect for now. Thank you, Thomas. Brilliant. Yeah, and you were sharing how about the sweet spot where we touch on the overwhelm and we can feel how we numb out. And I think many of us are journeying from habits of turning away from the news because we easily feel very emotionally activated, or just from a long-term habit of reading on a mental level and kind of, storing the facts so that we kind of know what's happening in the world, at least, And as we open up to soften our inner interiority to receive more of the world and notice our edge more consciously, yeah, I think many of us might be nervous about opening more. And we also find, with the kind of events that we have been witnessing, like our last call was about the typhoon that hit the Philippines just before Christmas. Or today we're looking at the wildfires that hit the area around Boulder. And some of these events are they're existentially threatening. People have lost their lives, have lost everything. And yeah, so can you just say more about how we caretake ourselves while doing global social witnessing?
Yeah, the first thing is to be aware of shoulds. Like often through our conditioning as human beings in our social framework, like there are lots of shoulds, what it means to be a good person, what it means to be a person that fits in, that belongs, so like a new should could be, how am I a great global social witness? So that should already prevents it in a way, because I stopped listening to my natural experience, and I already have an idea in mind how I need to be in order to be part of it. And that we are aware of that kind of frame that we look through sometimes. So we don't want to create another kind of conscious behavior. We want to develop like a deeper sensing and awareness of the process that I am in as like a mature citizen of this world. And that as a mature citizen of this world, I have learned to shut down a certain amount of information. I have learned to regulate myself in a certain amount of information, and maybe I'm getting overwhelmed by a certain amount of information. They are all three true for most of the people. There is a certain because of course, the more we integrate our own trauma, we can regulate ourselves. So then I don't ask the question, now, how much should I practice this? Because I'll feel when it's enough for me today. But if I don't feel it, then I need an amount to tell me how much. But it says that I don't fully feel myself, that I know when it's enough. Like, how much should I eat? And I feel how much I should eat. Like I stop when I feel it's enough. But if I don't feel it, then I need a kind of an external guidance. So I externalize my regulation. And the same is here also. It's important that that we are not trying to feel more, to be more part of the world, because that makes me a better citizen. That's very important to me, because otherwise we create another should and we start overloading ourselves with news or information that's not healthy. At the same time, I want to pay more attention. So when I read something on the news or I hear something from somebody in the neighborhood, that I'm more aware of my natural experience. So that I'm more aware of what happens in my body when, I hear this and I'm becoming a bit tighter. I hear this and I get scared. I hear this and I feel how my stress level goes up. I hear it and nothing happens. I feel kind of numb. I don't feel anything. And that I begin to notice that. That's like I'm honoring my natural experience instead of I'm trying to get into the right experience, because there's no right experience. My experience is the right one, because that's like in the Tao Te Ching of Lao Tse, there's this beautiful sentence: "The journey of 1,000 miles starts from beneath our feet." I cannot start my development 10 meters ahead of myself. I can only develop from where I'm standing. And so we want to get into what is actually my experience. And when I'm overwhelmed, I feel, yeah, I'm overwhelmed. Or what is overwhelmed? I'm becoming numb. And to fill my experience with more awareness, that's the first step. The second step is that I maybe take one news feed a day with which I practice like maybe 5 minutes to just see when I read this or about a certain event or something that happens, like what's my relation to that event? Am I related to that? Is it totally foreign to me? Is it at a distance? Is it close to me? Is it too much for me? What's my experience? And like that, I slowly illuminate places where I feel related to what happens in the world. And I can tell what's my mental, emotional, and physical experience. And to fill that process with more awareness, so that over time I can begin to notice the edges where my participation as a citizen carries the imprint of our collective trauma history. Because where I stop participating, it shows me the edges of my conscious participation. And that's what we want to only bring a bit more into awareness, and maybe have practice fields where we can do that together to learn from each other's experiences. So if you have a community like that, then that social body, what is global social witnessing, is kind of an awareness process within the social body. It's like that the social body wants to reactivate its immune system. Same as for an individual, a conscious process is that I'm aware what's happening in me. But if a social system practices that, then we become aware of the we. That's not fully the same like an individual becoming aware of the we. There's the I we, and then there's the we. And many people who run groups will know this, that individuals grow in their capacity to be aware of a group process, but the entire group is also building capacity as a group. There's a we capacity building, and there's an I capacity building, and they are interdependent. So this is I, infinite, we. So the I and the we are not separate. But often in our experience, we feel a bit separate, feel a bit distant, feel a bit othered or othering. So that's why there is a bit of a notion like a human being might be like a separate particle on the planet, instead of my body is the planet. This is not something else. I'm not something else than the planet. A human being is the planet. But the separation makes it look like as if I'm like a particle on the planet. But that's already part of the trauma separation. I don't feel fully connected to my ancestry, to the biosphere, to the planet, to the society around myself, to spirit, like that it's one flow. So trauma cuts that flow into pieces or fragments. And I think global social witness, and there's another, since we're exploring this, there's another important information to know that like trauma has a dispersing power. Trauma is like to take a piece of paper, wrap it into pieces, fragments, and throw it into the room. Healing trauma is a concentrating power. It brings the energy back into a coherent narrative. So there's a dispersed mental narrative. We cannot agree on a coherent narrative together. There's a dispersed emotional narrative. There's a dispersed physical narrative. There's a dispersed spiritual narrative. And there's, of course, a dispersed relational narrative. So relations are fragmented. In family systems, we can see it. There's often the story that we tell about is fragmented. And healing is bringing the fragments together so that it becomes a coherent narrative. Coherent in the sense that the nervous system in my own experience becomes a flow again. Physical, emotional, mental, spiritual becomes a flow. Inside, outside becomes a flow, but also the narrative becomes like the pieces come back together into a coherent narrative. So sometimes when we say, but how was it? And you see it a bit different than me, keep arguing, it loses totally the process. There's a dispersing power that disperses the narrative. That's the interesting thing. Not to find out who is right or wrong, but what's the dispersion and how we bring that into our awareness so that the fragments come naturally together than trying to force them together when they can't because they are being dispersed at the same time. And so this, because it's a grounding movement, like every trauma healing is like a coming back into the body, coming back into a sustainable way of living, coming back into regulation, coming back into right relation. So these are all effects of trauma healing. And that's why the collective narrative, especially the othering and the forces of fragmentation, these are very strong forces residing in our individual and collective unconscious that we can't override. We can only integrate those into a deeper, coherent stream. And I think that's part of the power of a social intervention technology, that I become aware of what I said right now in order to be part of that the collective witnessing has the same power on a collective or societal level. So if more and more people engage in their practice, the social body gets more self-awareness.
Yeah, beautiful. And maybe if you could just speak into that a bit more, like Angela also asked, what do you mean with social agency? And you've just spoken about true witnessing as being an act of participation, of coming back into right relation. Also, maybe that what we do in the Global Social Witnessing calls is listening to the different voices and experiences and, in a way, concentrating them back, or seeing how we can embrace all those voices back into a coherent we space. But maybe you can just say more about how the connection between global social witnessing and social agency.
Social agency is that every baby has a call, like an impulse to call for relation. It's a ding, or sends out energy to get a reflection back that helps us to wire the world. So we We are constantly sending out music. We are listening to the music that comes back, and that begins a wiring process of the world in us. And so when I, for example, as a baby, am hungry and I cry and I get neglected, then I cry like it's a call, but not much comes back. So that's not very conducive to the development of my social agency, because after some time my crying will die down, and then I will take that energy back inside and close off part of myself. And what I'm saying is that in the development of my voice and my outgoing and incoming energy stream, I learned that when I call for things and I get an appropriate response back, it strengthens the awareness that I have, how I affect you right now. But for many people, we cognitively know that we affect the world, but we don't fully feel it anymore. That I don't feel anymore how I'm arising in you, and the impact that I have on you, or the impact that I have in social systems. And that gap, that non-sensing, or that absence, partial absence, leads to the fact that all kinds of interpersonal processes fill that gap, including what might she think, and what does she think about it, and is it good or is it not good, or how do I land, and like all these things are happening in the gap of the non-sensing. All the projections are, when I project something on you, it's my disown stuff in the gap of me not feeling you. And so, because in data streaming, I feel you moment to 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 moment. And I feel also the impact I have on you and the impact that you have on me. So that's social agency. That's my capacity to co-create the world together with other people. It's not that I'm creating the world. It's also not that I am constantly fitting into somebody else's world. It's that when I come into an organization, I have an effect within that organization, and I'm co-creating that organization together with maybe hundreds or thousands of other people. But I feel I have the capacity to form life. And for some people, it's hard. We don't feel this. We don't feel because it got hurt. And so that's one part. And the other part is that I often say wisdom is the amount of world that is included in the way I live. Wisdom is the amount of world that is consciously included in the world, in the way I live. So growing maturation and wisdom has depth. Why? Because more of the world's process is included in the individual's movement. So if more of us include more of us in the way we live, we call this on the one hand social awareness. We call this we can call this a compassionate way of living, a caring way of living, an inclusive way of living. But it's not that I try to include other people, because if I'm trying, I know they are not included. When they are included, it's a natural process. It's flowing through me. When I need to make an effort to include something, then I know I'm separate. I feel separate. So it's much more intelligent to explore the separation and not the effort to be a good person. But if I continuously explore difficulties or challenging moments like what's the challenge in me, and I learn to integrate it. So I include more of the world. So I become wiser through my life because I take the challenges as my teachers. And so when I, in the global social witnessing, we work with both, that witnessing has an effect, like it's affecting our social environment and the sensing and the witnessing. But it's also the more I can include in the way I live, because I'm in a data stream. It's like data stream. It's a higher level of data streaming. So it also affects the world in the way I live, because more of the world's included in the way I make decisions, in the way I speak, in the way I move through the world, and the way I live, like my lifestyle. And so that together, I think it's strong, because global social witness is not just witnessing something and nothing's happening. It's just for the sense of seeing it. It makes me part of, and it creates like a warmer social space that has much more care and responsibility, like the ability to respond to the environment. And then many people might think, yeah, but then I cannot respond to everything. That's also not needed. Because the more coherence we create in the social space, certain events are for certain people to respond to. Not everybody needs to respond to everything physically or through action. So there are different levels of responding or engaging, but the intelligence of the entire system gets higher and higher, like the immune system becomes more effective. And I think that's what we aspire, that higher levels of social coherence are simply the social body becomes more intelligent. It's like a higher computer power.
Yeah, great, Thomas. And there's been a lot of really beautiful questions coming in from the chat, but I'll maybe just to end with, we might need to repeat a call like this in the future to respond to more of them. But just one question that also came from Teddy. You know, what is the impact that it has on our global social witnessing that currently in the Pocket Project field we have grown from, a lot of work being done in Europe on, especially starting from work on the Holocaust and then spreading to the US and now slowly spreading to embrace more and more countries in the world. I know you just shared, for instance, that in the global TWT, the Timeless Wisdom training that just started last weekend, we now have participants from 40 countries participating. So it's growing. But still, what is the impact that our Eurocentric or US-centric we space has on our capacity to develop the full potential of our care for the world?
Yes, that's very interesting, because I want to bring in like a little bit of a mystical lens for a moment. Wherever we have been born, or wherever life brings us at the moment, where it's our radius of influence, that's the cup that starts to accumulate more and more energy through like a data of energies, information in movement. So the more, when I live my life consciously and I'm committed to practice and training and integration. Integrating means whenever I hit difficulties, I really have a look at it and see what's actually the friction that I experience in myself with whatever a person, a situation, and a circumstance. So I'm committed to the integration part. And if I need, I go and I get the support I need to deal with the stuff that I can't do alone. So that's responsible. Why it's responsible? Because I know that's needed for me to grow as a human being. Otherwise, I keep repeating the things that I'm unaware of. So once I'm committed to that, I'm onboarding in energy. I'm learning constantly. So the wisdom is growing through integration work. On the other hand, I'm practicing to refine the parts of me that are open and resonant. I cannot practice a part of myself that is shut down. I need to integrate a part that is traumatized, and then I can practice that part to refine it. So if I'm committed to refinement and integration, I'm growing all the time. I'm learning through harvesting the unlearned stuff from the past, and I'm growing through downloading more future. So I'm in a continuous growth process, in a continuous updating, because I think the stuff that is unlearned from the Holocaust or racism or the Native American genocide or colonialism, like, and many other, I cannot name all the traumas, it's too much, but in the permafrost of trauma, there's always a pearl of learning that's frozen in the ice. Healing the trauma unleashes the learning, which comes with the integration of the trauma. So if we deal with genetic engineering, with artificial intelligence, with the leading edge of science, we need to be ethical. We have an ethical fitness. But we are lacking some of that fitness because it's frozen in the ice. And so without that ethical learning that is still frozen in some of the trauma, we also kind of challenged to deal with the current leading edge of development. And that's why we need both, because otherwise we will develop something and it will turn into another trauma cycle. But if we harvest the wisdom of learning from the trauma, then trauma is post-traumatic learning, trauma integration. Plus, innovation is learning from potentiality, like from the future potential of humanity. And I think both together are really powerful. And the reason why I'm saying this in relation to the question, if we started integrating, practicing, we develop a generator. The system starts to generate more energy than it had before. So if we do that consequently, it doesn't matter if we start this in Africa or in Asia or in Europe or in the States or wherever, the system starts to accumulate more energy. It becomes more and more intelligent because it's continuously learning. And so there will be time when it has kind of coherence jumps where more information will join and more information will join and more information will join. So the narrative, the coherent narrative gets bigger and has the power to onboard more information. And like this, naturally and organically, systems develop without the kind of broken floor. Because if I don't take care of the trauma, I can build a house, but part of the house will collapse again because it's not stable. So I need to create more stability to heal the cup in order to take more liquid into the cup. But if I pour 1,000 liters of liquid into a 1 liter bottle, it's a waste, like it's a waste of energy. We can't contain it. So growth, I think, sustainable growth has both increasing the cup, so integration, through right relation, we create a collective cup, and then we can expand the work we do, but we are also fit to do it. It won't kind of explode. But if I don't take care of the integration, the chances are accumulating that something's going to explode in the base because the shadow will grow too.
Yeah, beautiful, Thomas. And I feel like it really invites us to the patience. And as you said, the journey of 1,000 miles starts beneath our feet and with every step we take. So yeah, thank you for that. And I'm so glad that we're going to be continuing with you in an actual practice in just 15 minutes. So I'll just say a few words to bridge that gap. And then for all of you who are here now, you're welcome to join us for the next call. And Thomas, we will come back to you with more of our questions. And thank you so much for this beginning. Thank you.
Thank you.